Welcome. I'm Alan Cohen, and this is a quarantine interview. Today, I have a guest for you that's a music industry entrepreneur. He's a writer, producer, composer, and really an innovator of how music has been presented and is still being presented now. And he's an owner also and founder of quite a few music companies and online detection company, which he'll speak about in a few minutes. Scott, welcome. Good to see you today.
Good to see you too, Alan. How are you?
How you doing there? I see you got electronic drums, congas. Is that your studio? Is that
Yeah, it's my practice lair. You know, I have a couple of different places around town, and trying to keep my chops up while I'm sheltering in place.
Yeah, there you go. Keep your chops up. So, are you a percussionist too?
Yeah, I actually started as a drummer, but when I started doing studio work, I was way down on the list of people to call. So people used to call me as a percussionist in case their drummers didn't show up.
There you go.
Then I would sit behind the drums if the drummers would show up late. So that's kind of how I broke in.
Okay. So, what is your music background before we go into the great stuff that?
Yeah. So I wanted to become a baseball player actually growing.
We got the Mets on, huh?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Right. But you know, I think it was every little kid's dream to become a baseball player growing up in Brooklyn. And I was good. I was just, you know, I was bigger and taller and faster in my mind than I was in reality. So although I played baseball into my 40s, actually, I played in semi-pro leagues. I really had the bug really badly.
That's incredible.
Yeah, but when I was 13, my dad bought me a set of drums for my birthday, and you know that became my first love. And
you're a drummer. How do you like that?
yeah. So I studied piano since I was like 7 or 8, and then I went through high school. I went to Brooklyn Academy of Music High School in Brooklyn. Then I got a master's degree in music theory and education.
Oh, terrific.
And then I discovered New York City, and I got my first gig playing drums, and it was like a drug. You know, it was it for me. I knew that was what I really wanted to do.
Right.
You know?
Great. And then I know you produce a lot of themes for Fox, the NFL, NHL, NBL, NASCAR, the O'Reilly factors. So you also got into producing. But really, how did you start? I know one of your first company, I don't know if it's really the first, you'll tell us, was NJA, not
NJA.
Right, NJJ, I'm sorry. Not Just Jingles, which was really a production company.
Right.
You were really at the beginning of that.
So long story short, I started, I started hanging out where people who did what I wanted to do in the city, and I tried networking. I mean, I didn't know what that meant at the time, but that was what I was doing. And I wound up getting a non-paying gig at one of the jingle companies in New York City when I graduated college. And, I met people in advertising then. Right. You know, and I showed some promise. I obviously had some ability to write and play piano, and, you know, I had long hair back then. So, you know, I had the vibe, you know, and I got tapped on the shoulder one day to go work at McCann Erickson when I was in my mid-20s.
Wow. Yeah.
And I became, I don't know, an editor, a librarian. I ran their in-house music studio on Lexington Avenue.
Right, just to get your feet wet in any department.
Just to get my feet wet, right. And you know, I knew the arranger that was back then. They used to do what was called exploratories for Coca-Cola. Like every other day they were in studio trying to come up with the next Coke campaign, Coca-Cola.
Back then, didn't a lot of companies get paid actually to do the demos too?
Oh yeah, I mean, people made more money doing demos than they made doing final.
Demos is better than the one actual jingle.
Well, there was no computers, no Pro Tools. Everything was done live. If they did the wrong tempo, it was recorded in the wrong key. They had to bring the live band back in and, you know, get paid again and rebudget it.
What a difference, though, the way the business is now.
Unbelievable. But there I was, you know, right in the thick of it. And they did like 7 demos for Coca-Cola one day. And, you know, I was like low man on the totem pole, and the arranger couldn't do all the arrangements. So they threw me one the night before. And if they got to it the next day, they were going to let me. So I created this song on my Fender Rhodes piano in my apartment. They gave me some lyrics to work with, and I sat in the back of the studio waiting, for my turn, and it never came. And then they had like 10 minutes left. It was like 5 o'clock, and they said, "Scott, go out and play drums and piano to a click track, and I'll get one of the singers next door to come in and sing." It turns out that was the only thing the client reacted to, and it wound up being "Have a Coke and a Smile," and it was my
jingle. Good.
So I left McCann.
Fame and fortune from there on out.
No, not really. I mean, not directly, indirectly.
Sure.
Okay. I paid my dues doing that and didn't get the credit I thought I deserved. But I managed to leverage that. I left McCann that year, started my own jingle company, not just jingles, out of my apartment in Manhattan.
So that's where it came from. The name.
Yeah, I put "Have a Coke and a Smile" on my jingle reel.
Sure.
And I sent it out to all the advertising agencies, and I got a call from Ted Bates Advertising. And the guy said to me, "Did you write this?" And I go, "Actually, I did." He goes, "Well, can you come in? I want you to work on some Snickers commercials." So over the next year and a half, I did like 87 Snickers Satisfies You commercials, and I was off to the races.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, and I did, I don't know, hundreds of commercials, you name it. I mean, I literally spent 20, 25 years of my life writing and producing jingles.
Not just jingles, but all you.
But I changed it to NJJ.
That was not just the jingle.
Well, I changed it to NJJ Music because jingles wasn't so cool when sound design came in, right? So I didn't want to be called a jingle writer. I wanted to be called a composer, or sound designer.
Right.
So I got into the technology on a pretty heavy level and changed the name of the company, NJJ Music. Fast forward, met this guy in 1991, 92.
Yeah.
I'm way back. I'm absolutely dating myself. At ABC, Wide World of Sports. His name was Kurt Gowdy Jr. It was Kurt Gowdy's son who was running the sports department at ABC. One wonderful gentleman. I still work for him.
Oh, do you?
He runs the SNY network. So Mets, right? Therefore my shirt.
Well,
anyway, he gave me some gig to rearrange the Wide World of Sports theme that Ed Calof had originally done.
Oh, I know. Yeah.
Ed's a really talented guy. And I did, and I met another guy up there who wound up being interviewed for what was becoming Fox Sports. And he called me up on a Thursday or a Friday, and he said, "Look, I have an interview on Monday. I'd like to walk in there with some music and bowl them over. Do you think you can do it?" I asked him, "Sure, what's his budget?" He goes, "I don't have a budget." But I had my own studio, I had my own crew, I had my own writers. I had unbelievably great writers, and God bless them for working through that weekend with me. And we came up with a couple of themes, sent it out to Connecticut. He got on the plane, he called me on Monday. He said, "You're not going to believe this. I got the gig, but all they kept saying was, who did that music? They want to come to New York and meet you." So they came to New York. I met them, and that wound up becoming the beginning of Fox Sports and NFL and Fox. They never changed the theme. The theme you hear today is exactly the same theme as it was recorded and mixed in 1993.
Incredible. And of course, we'll get into a little further, but obviously the royalties come from the PROs, performance rights agencies.
Allegedly.
Yeah. So, thank goodness that type of work, I'm very interested. I do a lot of that work too, where it's royalties. So while you're sitting here right now talking to me, it could be playing anywhere around the world.
Right, that's right.
The great thing about the royalty side of the business is that it's not an hourly work, so you get paid up front or whatever it is, but it could continue, to your children's, hopefully.
Right. They call it giving. But the problem is, and this leads into the whole next 20 years of my life, or, from that point on.
Yes.
That I was very fortunate in having a lot of music being performed on television. It wasn't just the NFL. It was all the commercials and all the other TV shows that I worked on or produced. But unfortunately, as I'm sure you know, and everybody who's a composer or who's part of BMI and ascot, only a small portion of what you actually get on the air gets reported accurately. And that's the rub. Yeah. And I knew it firsthand, and I never thought of doing anything about it because it was a law of averages for me. I made my living writing. At the time, we would get reasonable budgets to work on. And so the performance income from BMI or ASCAP was gravy. I didn't rely on that money to make a living. That was, you know, the icing on the cake, so to speak.
Right.
But as the budgets diminished over the years, as more people started getting into the business and the technology became very accessible to everybody, there's a lot of talent out there that couldn't show it because they didn't have the access to a recording studio to spend $250,000 and buy equipment. But, you know, I mean, now you could record on your iPhone, but back then you needed a multi-track, you needed, you know, a console, you needed expensive microphones, an engineer. I mean, it was a whole deal. So, you know, I worked with a lot of co-writers over the years, and, you know, they weren't as fortunate as me. And they would call me and go, Scott, I saw the commercial on TV, or I saw the song we wrote on TV, and I got my ASCAP or BMI statement, and
It's not there.
nothing. You know, so I said, well, there's got to be a better way to do this. And I discovered this thing called watermark technology, and back in the 90s. And some guy came into my studio, put 2 early model laptops up, and he played music from one laptop, and the music popped up on the other laptop through the microphone, and it showed what the song was. And I went, holy, you know what? So how did you do that? And then he explained to me what watermarking was, where you physically embed a unique identifier into the audio that you supposedly don't hear. And then if the listening technology is hearing it, it'll pull out the signal and pop up what it is based on a database
that they have on the data. So before we go further, because I know the term is also fingerprinted, but they're actually different technologies.
Yeah.
Right. You just touch on that a little.
Yeah. So the predecessor to fingerprint technology was watermark technology.
The watermark first.
Right. You actually had to embed a unique identifier to identify that music that you couldn't hear. Fingerprinting is a passive technology, whether it's TuneSats or, you know, Google's, where you actually just take a digital fingerprint of like everybody has their own fingerprint. Sure. The music has its own identity, and depending on how sophisticated the algorithm is, and they're all different algorithms, the fingerprint just takes, our fingerprint just takes a top layer of what the audio path sounds like, and then it does its own machinations to it in our system, and we're able to detect it. But it's passive, meaning if the White Album that the Beatles did 35, 40, I don't know how many years ago that was released today, as long as we had a fingerprint of the original master recording and it didn't change, it wouldn't matter whether it was re-released today or I was listening to an album that was released 35 years ago, because there's nothing embedded. With watermarking technology, if I was to detect that White Album, I would only be able to detect any pressings that had the unique identifier embedded in it. So watermarking was a going forward technology back then.
Yes.
And fingerprinting was ubiquitous. It didn't care whether it was 35 years ago or 35 years from now, as long as the master recording doesn't change.
Of course, yeah.
So that was a big difference.
That's where you were back then. You saw this technology, and that really enlightened you to.
Right. So I said, there's got to be a better way to report music with technology, as opposed to having a human being who has the least knowledge and motivation to get it right, and it's probably the lowest paid on the totem pole.
Yeah.
And I spent a good deal.
It was done back then with the PROs.
Right. Right. I'm sorry.
Wasn't that the way it was done? The
pencil and paper. Yeah.
Right. Somebody sitting there listening and saying, "Oh, how can they remember 3 million?" I mean,
right. So that was the start of it, and you know, I used watermarking technology in the beginning because it was accessible and it was the only thing that was affordable at the time. It wasn't mine. And I slowly graduated to when fingerprint technology started to come on the scene. And I started experimenting with fingerprint technologies. But I had, at that point, created the architecture, at least not just in my mind, but in reality. You know, I had created the software that would interpret the detection data and marry it to a database. I had sophisticated algorithms at that point. I was working with developers. I was funding it all on my.
Right. I was going to ask you, so you're not actually the tech person itself, but really the ideas guy, or obviously you have enough about tech in your mind.
Yeah. I mean, I wasn't the programmer who wrote the actual code, but I worked with them. You know, I told them this is what I wanted. Sort of like a producer, you know.
Yeah, of course.
I don't know what every piece of gear does, but I know what it should sound like when I hear it.
let's tighten it up. Let's adjust.
That's right. But I did teach myself, FileMaker Pro, and enough to be dangerous, but not enough to be a professional. But I worked with people that were, and I was paying them to do it. So, I got a really good education on that. And once I realized I had something, I went to NBC, and who I had been writing music for Dick Ebersol and those guys back then, along with John Tesh, who was doing mostly the basketball stuff. And I was doing baseball and other sports for them. I said, look, you guys don't have any infrastructure, to report music. Give me an opportunity to bring this watermark technology in here. And I think there's an opportunity for both of us. We could simplify your cue sheet reporting process, make it more accurate, and just, let's see how it works before we tell anybody what we're doing here. So they gave me about a year and a half, and I was able to report Olympic performances and sports performances on NBC Sports to BMI and ASCAT that they actually paid people on based on this electronic reporting system that they didn't know was being automated. So it went full circle. Everybody got paid, and it was like, wow, there's a there. And that was really...
Was that a conflict in a way to the PROs where they're saying, oh, also we got to pay out that much more because...
No, because all they started seeing was accurate reporting cue sheets from, as long as you don't have 70 minutes in a 21-minute show on the cue sheet, they don't really vet the cue sheets. They basically pay what comes in.
Sure.
Right? Assuming that, that you have the writer-publisher information and splits correctly based on their registrations, and there's not more music in the show than it broadcast in, then okay.
Right, because there have been times when producers just, I wrote every other song besides the three.
Yeah, but there was a lot of people looking at what I was doing, so I was, double checking everything twice and making sure it was right, and it was, and that was the beginning of it. And
is that when you were still just doing the technology, or did you start the company?
Yeah. So this is the interesting part. At least I think it's the interesting part. So this is like the late 90s at this point, and I was self-funding it, and I was making a decent living, writing and producing, and getting royalty payments of the ones that were being reported. And I said, this is going to take a lot more money than I'll probably ever have. So I got to figure out how to get some investors in here. And I had no idea what I was up against. Here I was, basically a studio drummer, composer, writing jingles, trying to go into the business world and raise significant dollars to build a technology company against, the real, a substantive businessman. That wasn't my thing. I was a musician. But, necessity is the mother of invention, I guess. And I went to school I met somebody who was a really good, successful business guy, was a good friend of a friend of mine, and he mentored me of how to do this. And I was very fortunate. I wound up building a model based on reporting to show investors how much music actually gets used on television, not just mine, but others, that doesn't make it to the cue sheet. And if it does, it's inaccurate. So I was just basically trying to show what the size of the pool was and how misallocated the money that's collected and is misdistributed based on poor reporting. And it's significant. So that's when I came up with the music publishing company, which I couldn't tell anybody what I was doing because I didn't know if it was going to be on point or not. But I came up with FreePlay Music at the time.
Well, that
was how it came. In 2001, I said, well, I need a lot of data to sell this. And how am I going to get the data if I just start a library, compete against Killer Tracks and APM, all the major production companies that were charging license fees? I was like, not even a pimple on the, a dot on the radar. I said, I know, I'll give it away. Why not? Well, I got my Rolodex out. I produced all the music. I owned all the content. And I said, look, use the music instead of paying sync license fees for all these other major libraries, which I really pissed off at the time.
Oh, I'm sure.
But they didn't know why I was doing it, and I didn't tell anybody why I was doing it. I was basically giving away the music to get the performance data because everything was watermarked.
Huh. Wow.
I got, within a year, 480,000 performances on national network TV in the United States by giving away my music.
Giving it away.
Less than 20% made it to the cue sheets.
Right. So there's the 80+% that you're not getting paid on.
Not just me.
Yeah, right.
Everybody.
Right.
I was the tip of the iceberg. You've seen those pictures, right?
The whole industry.
They show the tip of the iceberg coming out of the water, but then they go underneath it. It's like the size of a continent.
Dollars that are being lost. Millions of dollars, right?
Not lost, misallocated.
Misallocated. Okay.
So that was like eye-opening.
Yeah.
So then I took that data, I built a business model, projections, the whole 9 yards, sort of like an MBA would do from a drummer's perspective. And I went and
a business plan to show to investors.
I put a business plan
This is
together.
the market. This is what's missing, and if we do this, we could do that.
That's right. What the idea was, if we show this to BMI and ascot, that they would get an epiphany and they go, "Wow, this is the future. Let's not rely on people. Let's rely on technology to do it."
Let me ask this one question though, because I said it before, but if there's more that needs to be paid out, are they now having to charge, misallocate?
Way down the road on the story. For me, all I was working on at the time was how to more accurately report it. Because I figured once we could do that, the momentum of it would just be a natural progression and everything else would be figured out.
Yes.
Little did I know, I was creating what I was actually doing. Yeah, a monster, right. Well, but not really. I mean, it was for all the right reasons. So for me, it was.
I didn't mean a negative monster, but like a huge, industry changer.
Right. So I went out and I got some angel funding, long story short, and, enough to hire some people, pay them, and really hone the business model, hone the algorithms, the applications, and really put it to good use. And started using it, and it was really working really well. But then fingerprinting really started to come into its own. And I went out and tried to secure a license for fingerprint, and I wound up working with the guys at Shazam.
Right.
They weren't in the United States at the time. So I licensed their technology. I used it during some of the Olympics for NBC. It was good. It wasn't great. It was about 60% accurate. It needed a lot of algorithm work to work with what we call dirty audio, where music is underneath, sound effects, voiceover.
A lot of those are listening to a song on the radio, you could tell what it is. Your stuff really is going.
That was the secret sauce.
Down.
You had to be able to detect the music when it was almost imperceptible to the listener in the broadcast. You had to be able to detect the radio on the Cosby Show in the background and know what song it was that wasn't even the focus of the audio, right?
Yes.
And that was no easy feat. Shazam out the box did an okay job, but not a great job. It wasn't something that would be usable in the way we really wanted to use it. I didn't have the funding that I needed then to have an exclusive license and have them develop it. So I went out to try and find my own. And I literally scoured the earth. I mean, I must have seen 15 or 20 different algorithms that almost did what we needed it to do, but not quite. And then we found a French technologist named Sylvain Demanger out of Paris, France. Went to go meet with him. He had a detection technology that was able to identify music in a very noisy environment, not for this purpose, for a different purpose. Then we brought him to New York, and we became like the Three Musketeers, and he joined as our chief technologist.
Other three. Who's the third?
My partner, Chris Woods. Yeah. And we went to town really developing the business model with a fingerprint technology that we owned and controlled at that point. And we were off to the races. Now I needed to go out and raise some real dollars. And then I was very lucky. I went out and started doing a roadshow with a new business plan using fingerprint technology in about 2007. And I was able to raise the kind of money we needed to build our data center at the Google building, hire some more developers, and we started, building the business. And TuneSat was started and off to the races. We went public with TuneSat, I believe 2011. We brought in some significant dollars at that time from GE Asset Management, and I think now we have about 10,000 user accounts worldwide. TuneSat supplies not just subscription services, but we copyright enforcement for all the major publishers around the world.
Yeah.
We had our own in-house legal counsel that has since started their own law firm. We have a bunch of researchers. And
I'm one of those 10,000 accounts. I started maybe not at the very beginning, but close to the very beginning. And what about? Did you ever get also false detections? Of course, because sometimes. Is it that precise? Because I remember sometimes.
You know, what I tell people is like, no technology is foolproof, right? But I like to focus on what we do really well, as opposed to the anomalies that everybody's going to have.
Okay.
You know, so the technology is accurate as it could possibly be, doing what it does.
Yeah.
The amount of false negatives detections is de minimis compared to the tens of millions of detections we're getting that are positive.
Exactly.
I mean, it wouldn't even show up on the radar compared to the amount of positive detections we get that are false.
So let me ask you, because when we first started using it, no, I'm not worried about the negatives, but it really helped our company as a small indie production company. We started seeing our music too, and like you saying, wow, there's a lot of stuff playing every day of the week. And then I started checking, and maybe it wasn't so much that the networks purposely didn't put it in the cue sheets,
Right.
but we did notice that there were many that were not put in the cue sheets.
Right.
So it really helped us, and thanks to your the software, we did go after many companies and said, "Hey, it wasn't in there." They go back and forth. How do you know? Well, we have TuneSat, and they say, "Well, TuneSat's not 100%," but then we go back and forth. And usually we settle somehow and say, "Look, for you to really ingest it and figure it out all yourself is way too much money. Let's come up with a figure that's, you know, kind of somewhere that we could agree and get."
Let me say this. You know, I'm not here to disparage or take shots at the PROs, because, you know, that's not what I do.
Yeah, of course.
I can tell you that our technology is light years better than anything they do manually still.
Of course.
And you know, there are political and monetary reasons why TuneSat or fingerprint technology in general is not used for the improvement of the royalty collection and payment system. But, you know, I realized that 5 years ago, it was sort of like banging my head against the wall. So we pivoted. You know, we still have a subscription service, and fortunately, a lot of composers like you, like me, use our technology to, you know, send out to the production companies and the music departments in advance of any incomplete or wrong cue sheets being sent into the PROs using our data. In Europe, you know, accepts TuneSat from their affiliate members, and lots of people are very happy about that. I mean, I would love to see that here, but, you know, we weren't holding our breath. But when the internet started to become what it is becoming and what it now is, the amount of music that is used on the internet is exponentially greater than the amount of music on television around the world.
Right. So you're saying like YouTube and stuff like that.
All the social media networks, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Quibi now. I mean, everywhere, right? It's just every major company has a presence on the internet. They have their own YouTube channel, you know. The copyright issue of using music without the proper licenses from those copyright holders is a big deal. So what we've now done, and where the focus of our business is now copyright enforcement for rights holders.
Okay.
Right. So we find unauthorized uses of music using our technology. We've built our own web crawling technology at this point. It's very sophisticated. We're monitoring millions and millions of websites around the world, Fortune 500 companies, never user-generated content, never individuals, you know, just people that should know better and should play by the rules. And you know, we enforce copyrights using our technology. We get people paid who should be paid for the intellectual property.
Yeah.
And you know, we do it above board, full transparency and accountability to everybody. And we're trying to level the playing field. That's really what we're trying to do here, and we've had a lot of success with it. So that's kind of where we're at right now. How has the apocalypse affected us? I mean, as you know, I talked a little bit offline. You know, ascot came out with, you know, they're not going to be able to make their writer distributions like they did last quarter.
One month from the beginning,
Yeah,
like
that's
longer next time. Yeah.
well, Hollywood is basically shut down. You know, I'm getting calls from library owners like you, like me, you know, where they're just not doing any licensing. I mean, there's no production. There's no production, and there's no needs for music. There's no need for music. There's no need for monitoring. There's no need for a collection of distribution. So it's, you know, there's a domino effect happening here. So,
But I mean, at first I thought that was the only safe place to still be with the royalties. Aren't as many shows made it? Maybe it's not a news show, but all day long it's on TV. There's something.
right. Yeah, you know, we're insulated to a degree in the business that we're in, right? But not 100%. So there'll definitely be some fallout, and it's starting to happen, and I can see it because you know, I'm in this captain's chair every day. When I mean that, figuratively, not literally. You know, seeing what's going on. You know, the detections that we're getting hasn't fallen off, but you know, the amount of royalty collection going forward, distribution going forward, is probably going to diminish unless this thing comes to a halt at some point in the near future. You know, it's definitely a domino effect. I don't see how it doesn't affect every pore of, you know, everyone's business at some level, right?
Well, I mentioned another company that I work with, and we get a lot of plays on their radio play stuff.
Right.
You know, stuff, of course, like Muzak was or whatever. It's in restaurants, in bars, in clubs, here and there. And obviously, with those places being closed down, a lot of those smaller companies around the world that put music into restaurants in wherever it is, Peru, small, they're going out of business because there's no restaurants, there's no this. So obviously, that's going to trickle down, like you said, domino effect, that's first starting to come into play, where in those venues there's less music. I mean, it's on TV network every day, cable, but yet the venues where you need people coming in obviously is cutting down.
Yeah, I mean, fortunately for TuneSat and you know, being the conspiracy theorist that I am by nature,
Me too.
I kind of felt that this was going to be bad weeks before it actually became bad. So I prepared our employees to work from home remotely, get VPN access to all the servers, you know, got everybody set up. So I wouldn't say it was a seamless transition but I do realize how, I wouldn't say easy, but I do realize how quickly we were able to adapt. Maybe not as ideally as we'd like it to be, but all my employees are working from home. You know, they're judged and reviewed on their productivity anyway. So, you know, it's not like they're not doing their gig at home the same way.
Coffee break, it doesn't matter as long as they
exactly. So, you know,
I think it was going that direction for a lot of people anyway.
Yeah. So I said to Chris,
this forced us to really do it.
I said to my partner, you know, I don't even think we're really gonna need office. Are we ever gonna sit in a conference room and have meetings with people in the next year or two?
I would never be talking to you.
Yeah, probably not. So, you know, I think we're in a fork in the road here of how go forward, right? How's it going to go forward? You know, there's going to be some fall off. There's going to be some new creation, new ideas, new innovation of how to work, and maybe some cost savings will be applied. You know, if you don't have to pay 6-figure rent for your office space, you know, people just got raises from my perspective because they don't have to commute. You know what I mean? They
an extra hour before, an extra hour.
They keep more of their salary.
Right.
So, I think,
This way, since you say conspiracy theory, this is more fun because we're on a platform where I can speak to you
sure.
on the internet. You're freezing a little bit,
Yeah.
but so everybody's using this new platform or
Yeah.
the many different platforms.
Yeah.
What happens? I keep saying, what happens if they shut down the internet? We can't get across. Then we're more isolated, and then it's a whole nother level of that apocalypse.
Yeah. I don't think that'll happen.
You don't think that?
If that happens, then we got other problems. You know what I mean? If that happens, we're all going to be in deep poop,
Well,
so.
what's really running the internet that we could always be online? What is that?
uh, some alien technology shit, I guess. I don't know. I don't know what it is.
I stumped the star.
But no, so, because we have our data center here at the Google building on Fifth Avenue, and getting in there is like getting in Fort Knox. I mean, I don't know if you've ever been there, but getting into your actual server cage is like very, very, a lot of security. That they told me that if the electricity, if that building ever goes down, the internet east of the Mississippi in the United States goes down.
Okay, so that can't.
Electricity, you need power.
Right.
The power grid. If the power grid goes down, I think we're all screwed.
Big trouble.
Yeah, but I think that as long as the power grid stays up, we're good.
Hopefully.
And there's probably a lot of redundancy built into that than people know. So, back up.
So it seemed that you were able to adapt, and it seems like as we're getting towards the end of this, just to wrap up things. Being flexible, being able to adapt. Of course, right now you adapted so quickly that it was like seamless that you could still be working, and people are not missing their detections and everything else. So really, just being flexible and adaptable to everything. I did a report on one of these on business continuity planning.
Yeah, business continuity planning.
Well, a lot of companies don't. I mean, obviously, bigger companies do, but even the smaller independents have to think about if this happens, how fast you could cite what's going on, how fast you make a plan to change, how fast you change, and then the last but final is analyze what you did and fix that plan.
Though, man, it's by the luck of the draw that I'm able to do this. I mean, if I had a brick and mortar store, or if I had a restaurant or hotel chain, I'd be screwed like everybody else.
You're all.
Yeah, I mean, I happen to be online. I could work from my bedroom. My lawyers can work in their homes. Internet, we don't have to even drop anything in the mail. We could just send an email attachment. Lawyers are set up home working, answering emails for their companies. I'm just lucky that way that my business is electronic. It's not brick and mortar, right? But like I said before, there's a trickle down situation here. It does affect everybody. It permeates everybody. It's going to get into this part of the business eventually. Hopefully we'll get out of it sooner than that.
So, do you have a great closing statement, a little inspiration, or something to close us out?
Well, I wish I could say, something very prolific here, but, I just wish that everybody stay safe, be smart, do the right thing, protect yourselves and your family, and, don't be stupid and don't start protesting and going out in the street, because this thing will come back and bite everybody in the ass like we don't want that. Mm-hmm. And I think the curve is down because people are huddling, and I could see from the streets, as I'm sure you can, most people are listening to what's going on out there, and we have to continue to abide by Cuomo, and whether you like him or not, or his politics, we have to listen. We have to kick this thing in the ass.
Politics and really have the wisdom to.
I think that's right. And
both sides, him and Trump, or whatever. I don't want to get into politics. They were both complimenting each other yesterday. I saw that they gave us this, we did that, and. It's going to be beyond that, for us to be successful.
This will come to an end.
Yeah.
And just hopefully, it'll be sooner rather than later. Yeah. And, whatever the new normal will be, we'll adapt, because that's what we do. That's what we do as human beings. And most people are good. I know that for sure. And, we'll figure this out.
Right. This is great. This is a terrific, terrific interview. Scott Schreer,
Yep.
I like to say a music industry entrepreneur, of course, a great writer, producer, and really an innovator in this market of the music industry. I can't thank you enough for, you know,
Well, I enjoy speaking to you.
valuable time taking yourself away, you know, during this time. But no, really, and you gave us a lot of insight into the industry, how your company developed, where it's going, and how it really, you know, on a just a regular level, really helped the producers and writers, you know, get their fair share. And I'm a big royalty guy. I'm a big copyright guy. I believe that is for the creator.
Well,
And
thanks, Alan.
they should be paid. And I want to thank you from my heart for my company and my music, and for the thousands and thousands of people that you really, you
Well,
know,
I appreciate that, and I don't take any of it for granted. I count my blessings every day. I really do.
you got
I'm
it.
appreciative.
Okay. Thank you so much. Signing off. My name's Alan Cohen, and this was the Quarantine Interview. Thank you.